In the glittering lobby of New York's Grand Plaza Hotel, a moment of cruelty transforms into an unforgettable act of kindness. When a receptionist publicly humiliates a hard-working couple on their 10th anniversary, she never expects Hollywood's most beloved star to witness her behavior. This true story of dignity, compassion, and justice reminds us that sometimes angels arrive wearing casual hoodies, and their names just might be Keanu Reeves. Sarah Martinez first met Tom Richards in a small coffee shop where she worked mornings before her teaching job at an elementary school. Tom would stop by every day before heading to his construction site, ordering the same black coffee and always leaving an extra $1 in the tip jar. Their love story started with those simple morning exchanges, quiet smiles, and shared dreams of a better future. 10 years had passed since their wedding in Sarah's parents' backyard, where string lights twinkled above folding chairs, and Tom's mother's homemade tres leches cake took center stage. They'd promised each other then that hard work would pave the way to their dreams. Through a decade of marriage, they'd kept that promise, saving every spare dollar while building their life together in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Tom had worked his way up from construction worker to site supervisor, taking night classes in project management while Sarah earned her master's degree in education. Their shared calendar on the refrigerator tracked bill payments, loan dues, and their special savings goal, 10th anniversary at the Grand Plaza Hotel. They'd chosen this hotel for a reason. It was where Sarah's grandparents had celebrated their 50th anniversary, back when her grandfather was still alive. Sarah remembered that night vividly. The crystal chandeliers, the marble floors, the way her grandmother's eyes sparkled with joy. The past year had tested their resolve more than any before. The construction company Tom worked for went bankrupt without warning, leaving him and hundreds of others jobless. Their savings, meant for a down payment on a small house, slowly dwindled as Tom searched for new work. Sarah picked up extra tutoring hours after school, and Tom took whatever odd jobs he could find, from handyman work to weekend moving jobs. Still, they protected one special account, the anniversary fund. Even when the electricity bill ran high or the car needed repairs, they never touched those savings. Some nights, they'd sit at their small kitchen table, eating beans and rice, and Tom would describe the suite they'd stay in, making Sarah laugh with his elaborate descriptions of fancy soaps and fluffy robes. 3 months ago, Tom had finally landed a promising position with a smaller construction firm. The pay was less than his previous job, but it was steady work with good people. They'd celebrated that night with $2 pizza slices from their neighborhood joint, both knowing their anniversary dream was still within reach. Today marked exactly 10 years since they danced in that backyard to their wedding song, At Last, by Etta James. Sarah had spent the morning carefully ironing her best dress, a navy blue number she wore to parent-teacher conferences. Tom had his suit pressed at the local dry cleaners, spending an extra $5 to make sure the creases were perfect. They'd saved exactly enough for one night in a standard room at the Grand Plaza, plus dinner at the hotel's casual bistro rather than its famous fine dining restaurant. As they rode the subway from Queens to Manhattan, Sarah held Tom's hand, remembering how her grandmother had described her anniversary night. "It's not about the fancy room or expensive food," she told Sarah. "It's about marking a milestone with the person you love, about celebrating the life you've built together." They emerged from the subway station into the fading autumn light, Tom carrying their small overnight bag. They'd splurged on a new one from Target for the occasion. The Grand Plaza Hotel rose before them, its limestone facade glowing golden in the setting sun. Through the revolving doors, they could see the famous lobby with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. Sarah squeezed Tom's hand, feeling the rough calluses earned from years of honest work. He squeezed back, and they shared a look that spoke volumes. Pride in what they'd achieved, excitement for this special night, and most of all, love that had only grown stronger through every challenge they'd faced together. They didn't know that behind those elegant doors, their anniversary celebration would take a turn they never expected, leading to a night that would change not only their lives but the lives of everyone who witnessed what was about to unfold. The Grand Plaza's marble lobby echoed with the gentle sounds of classical music as Sarah and Tom approached the front desk. Behind the polished counter, Jennifer Matthews adjusted her designer glasses and continued typing without acknowledging their presence. After several moments, she glanced up, her eyes scanning their modest attire with poorly concealed disdain. Tom cleared his throat softly and placed their reservation confirmation on the counter. The paper had been printed carefully at the local library, its edges still crisp from being protected in a folder. Sarah stood close to him, her hand resting gently on their new overnight bag, fingers tracing the Target price tag they'd forgotten to remove. Jennifer picked up the paper with her manicured fingers as if it might carry dust. Her lips curved into what might have been intended as a smile but landed closer to a smirk. The lobby's magnificent chandeliers cast shadows across her face as she began tapping aggressively at her keyboard. Other guests in the lobby, dressed in designer clothes and carrying luxury shopping bags, began to take notice of the scene unfolding. A small crease appeared between Jennifer's eyebrows as she studied her screen. Her red-painted lips pursed together before she spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the marble expanse. She announced there seemed to be a problem with their reservation, her tone suggesting the only problem was their presence in her hotel. Tom quietly explained they'd booked 3 months ago, paid in full. He reached for his phone to show the confirmation email. Sarah noticed his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of maintaining composure. A young couple nearby paused their conversation to watch, whispering behind expensive shopping bags. Jennifer's voice grew louder, articulating each word as if speaking to children. She pointed out their reservation was for the hotel's standard room, her emphasis on standard, drawing curious glances from other guests. She suggested perhaps they'd be more comfortable at one of the budget hotels in Queens. The word budget fell from her lips like something distasteful. Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she held her head high. She thought of her grandmother, how she'd walked these same floors with dignity 50 years ago. Tom's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture practiced through a decade of facing challenges together. The security guard by the entrance shifted his weight, moving slightly closer. Jennifer's smile grew colder as she noted their paid rate was significantly lower than current room prices, a special online promotion they'd booked months ago. She strongly implied they couldn't afford any incidentals, making a show of checking their credit card hold. More guests had stopped to observe now, creating an audience for their humiliation. A woman in a fur coat clutched her designer purse closer, as if poverty might be contagious. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the ornate ceiling. Jennifer's voice rose with them, suggesting that perhaps there had been a mistake in accepting their reservation at all. Tom opened his mouth to respond, his usual quiet dignity wrapping around him like armor. But before he could speak, movement near the entrance caught everyone's attention. The whispers shifted, changed tone. Jennifer's face transformed, her practiced superior expression faltering as she recognized the figure who had been standing in the shadows, watching the entire scene unfold. Near the hotel's revolving doors, a man in a well-worn black hoodie had been observing the scene, unnoticed by the crowd focused on the drama at the front desk. Keanu Reeves stood quietly, his presence somehow both commanding and humble, watching as the situation unfolded. He'd arrived early for a film shoot nearby and had chosen to wait in the lobby, blending into the background as he often preferred to do. Through the entire exchange, his dark eyes had tracked every detail. The way Tom's shoulders remained straight despite his trembling hands, how Sarah's chin lifted slightly higher with each cutting remark, the cruel curl of Jennifer's lips as she wielded her temporary power. He noticed the other guests too, their designer clothes and judgmental whispers, the security guards' uncertain hovering, the way privilege and prejudice filled the air like expensive perfume. The scene struck a chord deep within him. His own mother had worked as a costume designer, raising him alone while struggling to make ends meet. He remembered the sideways glances, the subtle dismissals, the way some people made assumptions based on what you wore or how much money you had. Success hadn't erased those memories. It had only strengthened his resolve to fight such injustice when he encountered it. Keanu adjusted his hoodie and stepped forward. The movement rippled through the lobby like a stone dropped in still water. First, a young woman with shopping bags recognized him, her gasp cutting through the tension. Then others began to notice, phones appearing in hands, whispers changing tone from condescension to excitement. Jennifer's voice trailed off mid-sentence as the whispers reached her ears. She looked up, her practiced smile faltering as Keanu approached the desk. The security guard straightened his posture, uncertain whether to move closer or step back. Sarah and Tom remained unaware of the shift behind them, their focus still on maintaining their dignity in the face of humiliation. Keanu's footsteps echoed against the marble floor, each step deliberate and measured. He'd seen enough. The crowd parted before him like a gentle wave, designer bags clutched tight, phones recording discreetly. The lobby's chandeliers caught the silver in his beard, the kindness in his eyes, the quiet authority in his bearing. As he reached the desk, he noticed the small wear marks on Tom's carefully pressed suit, the way Sarah's fingers worried the handle of their new Target bag, the pride in their posture despite everything. In that moment, he saw not just two people being humiliated, but a reflection of countless others who'd faced similar treatment. His mother. Himself. Anyone who'd ever been judged by their wallet rather than their worth. Keanu stopped beside them, his presence bringing a sudden hush to the lobby. Jennifer's fingers froze over her keyboard. Tom and Sarah turned, surprise registering on their faces as they recognized him. The moment hung suspended in the crystal-lit air, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Keanu rested his hands on the polished counter, his presence bringing warmth to the cold marble surface. The lobby had fallen into such silence that the gentle fountain in the corner seemed thunderous. Jennifer's perfectly manicured fingers trembled as she reached to adjust her designer glasses, her previous confidence evaporating under his steady gaze. He spoke softly, but his voice carried through the hushed space. He asked Sarah and Tom about their anniversary, his genuine interest evident in the gentle tilt of his head and the warmth in his eyes. Tom explained their decade of marriage, their special connection to the hotel through Sarah's grandparents, their months of saving for this single night. His voice grew stronger with each word, pride replacing embarrassment as he spoke of their journey together. Sarah added details about her grandmother's 50th anniversary celebration in this very lobby, her eyes bright with emotion as she described the crystal chandeliers that had mesmerized her as a child. Keanu listened intently, nodding at the mention of family traditions and shared dreams. The watching crowd shifted uncomfortably, some lowering their phones as the humanity of the moment penetrated their desire for social media content. Jennifer attempted to interject, her voice adopting a syrupy sweetness that contrasted sharply with her earlier cruelty. Keanu held up a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. His expression remained kind, but his words carried steel beneath their softness. He spoke of his own mother's struggles, of nights when dinner meant sandwiches shared in a small apartment, of the dignity of hard work and honest love. Then he turned to Jennifer, asking her to pull up the hotel's availability. She complied immediately, her fingers shaking as she typed. Keanu requested the entire floor where Sarah and Tom's room was located. Jennifer's eyes widened as he specified he wanted it for the next 3 nights. The whispers resumed, rippling through the crowd like wind through leaves. He explained his plan quietly to the stunned couple. They would have their original room, but now with access to the hotel's finest amenities. The rest of the floor would remain empty, ensuring their privacy. He requested the presidential suite be prepared for their anniversary dinner, complete with a view of the city lights they'd worked so hard to be part of. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were different from the ones she'd fought back earlier. Tom's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that spoke of years of facing both hardship and joy together. Keanu noticed this small movement, and a gentle smile crossed his face. He recognized in their touch the same quiet strength he'd seen in his mother's hands years ago. Several of the watching guests stepped forward, some offering apologies, others sharing their own anniversary stories. The woman who had clutched her designer purse earlier approached Jennifer's desk, requesting to pay for Sarah and Tom's anniversary dinner. Others joined in, creating an impromptu celebration of love that transcended social barriers. Jennifer sat rigid in her chair, her perfect posture now a prison of her own making as she processed reservations and watched her carefully constructed world of status and judgment crumble. The security guard had moved back to his post, now smiling warmly at the scene unfolding before him. Keanu handled his card to Jennifer without fanfare, the same way he'd seen his mother pay for groceries years ago, with quiet dignity. The lobby's atmosphere had transformed, the earlier tension replaced by something warmer, more genuine. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above, witnesses to a moment when kindness trumped cruelty, when love proved more valuable than luxury, when humanity shone brighter than any polished marble surface. The hotel's general manager arrived in the lobby within minutes of hearing about Keanu's presence, his tailored suit indicating a hasty return from dinner. His face shifted from a practiced welcome smile to genuine concern as he absorbed the scene before him. The manager, Michael, had worked his way up from housekeeping over 20 years, and something in Sarah and Tom's story resonated with his own journey. Jennifer squirmed in her chair as Michael reviewed the security footage on a tablet brought by his assistant. The recording captured every dismissive gesture, every cruel word she had thrown at the hard-working couple. Michael's expression grew darker with each passing moment, his own memories of struggling against prejudice clearly reflected in his eyes. He turned to Sarah and Tom first, his apology genuine and heartfelt. The hotel would not only honor their original reservation rate but would upgrade them to their finest suite at no additional cost. The presidential suite Keanu had requested for their dinner would be prepared immediately, and the hotel's executive chef would create a special anniversary menu just for them. Michael then addressed Jennifer, his voice firm but professional. He explained that her actions violated not only the hotel's policies but basic human dignity. Her employment would be suspended pending review, but the decision in his eyes was already clear. Jennifer's perfectly composed facade cracked as she gathered her designer handbag, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor toward the employee exit. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, but not before several guests approached Sarah and Tom. A famous fashion designer who had witnessed everything quietly handed her card to Sarah, mentioning her company was hiring teachers for their children's education program. An older couple celebrating their own anniversary insisted on adding a spa package to their stay, remembering their own humble beginnings 40 years ago. Hotel staff moved with efficient grace, transforming the presidential suite into an anniversary haven. Fresh roses appeared, their fragrance replacing the lingering tension in the air. The executive chef personally visited their suite, creating a menu that incorporated elements of both their cultural backgrounds, a touch of Sarah's Mexican heritage blended with Tom's traditional American favorites. Keanu stayed quietly in the background, allowing the moment to belong to Sarah and Tom. He watched as they were escorted to their suite, their Target overnight bag now carried by a respectful bellhop who treated it with the same care as the expensive luggage he usually handled. Before heading to his own room, Keanu had one more request. He asked Michael to implement a training program for staff about treating all guests with equal respect, offering to fund it himself. In their suite, Sarah and Tom stood amazed at the panoramic views of the city lights. The room was bigger than their entire apartment, decorated with elegant furnishings that somehow felt welcoming rather than intimidating. On the king-size bed, the staff had arranged rose petals in the shape of a heart, and a handwritten note from Michael expressed his hopes that this would be the first of many anniversaries they would celebrate at the Grand Plaza. The hotel's head chef appeared with a bottle of champagne, sharing stories of his own parents' struggles as immigrants while he prepared their private anniversary dinner. The entire floor, now reserved just for them, felt like a sanctuary of acceptance and celebration. Other staff members found subtle ways to make their experience special. The concierge brought up a framed photo of Sarah's grandparents' anniversary celebration that she found in the hotel's archives, while the housekeeping supervisor left a hand-crocheted anniversary blanket she had been saving for a special guest. As the evening settled around them, Sarah and Tom sat in their suite's window alcove, holding hands and watching the city sparkle below. They had come to mark 10 years of love and partnership, expecting a simple night in a standard room. Instead, they found themselves at the heart of a moment that proved true worth isn't measured in dollars or designer labels, but in the capacity for kindness and the dignity of the human spirit. The presidential suite transformed into an intimate celebration space as evening deepened into night. The executive chef had outdone himself, creating a menu that told Sarah and Tom's love story through food. The first course featured coffee-spiced appetizers, honoring their first meeting at the coffee shop. The main course combined street tacos inspired by Sarah's family recipes with elevated comfort food that reminded Tom of his mother's cooking. Throughout the evening, small gestures of kindness continued to arrive. The hotel's florist created centerpieces mixing roses with wildflowers, reminiscent of Sarah's backyard wedding bouquet. The pastry chef recreated a miniature version of Tom's mother's tres leches cake, using a recipe she tracked down through a series of phone calls to Tom's family. In the lobby, Michael gathered his staff for an impromptu meeting. He shared his own story of starting as a housekeeper, of learning English during night shifts, of guests who had looked through him as if he were invisible. The younger staff members listened intently as he explained how tonight's events would reshape the hotel's approach to hospitality. From now on, every guest would be treated with equal respect, regardless of the room rate they paid or the clothes they wore. Letters began arriving at the front desk, notes from other hotel guests who had witnessed the earlier scene. A Broadway producer and his wife shared their own story of struggling through their early years, performing in tiny theaters and sleeping on friends' couches. Now successful, they included tickets to their latest show for Sarah and Tom. A retired teacher wrote about how Sarah's dignity reminded her of her own early teaching days, when she'd worked second jobs to afford classroom supplies. Keanu's quiet influence continued to ripple through the hotel. He'd arranged for a photographer to capture professional anniversary portraits of the couple, suggesting they use the hotel's elegant spaces as backdrops. When Sarah mentioned they'd never had professional wedding photos, he ensured the session included formal portraits they could display in their home. The hotel staff, inspired by the evening's events, contributed their own talents. The maintenance supervisor, a former musician, arranged for a string quartet of music students from a nearby conservatory to perform Tom and Sarah's wedding song, At Last. The front office manager discovered that her grandmother and Sarah's had been friends years ago, sharing stories and photos that added another layer of meaning to the celebration. In their suite, Sarah and Tom danced to Etta James's voice, her timeless lyrics floating through the room. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows, but they saw only each other, their love deeper and stronger for every challenge they'd faced together. Their simple anniversary had become something extraordinary, not because of the luxury surrounding them, but because of the genuine connections and kindness they'd experienced. Michael ensured that every moment was documented, not for publicity, but as a reminder of the hotel's renewed commitment to true hospitality. The security footage that had captured Jennifer's cruelty would become part of the hotel's training program, teaching future staff about the impact of their actions. But more importantly, the evening's transformation would be remembered as a moment when humanity and compassion prevailed over prejudice and presumption. As midnight approached, Sarah and Tom found a handwritten note from Keanu slipped under their door. He shared memories of his mother's struggles and triumphs, ending with words that brought tears to their eyes. True wealth isn't found in bank accounts or brand names. It's found in the strength of your love, the dignity of your character, and the beauty of your resilience. Your story will inspire others, just as you've inspired me tonight. 1 year later, the Grand Plaza Hotel's lobby sparkled with the same crystal chandeliers, but something fundamental had changed. A new plaque hung beside the front desk, reading "Every guest, every story, every time." The hotel's new service philosophy inspired by that unforgettable night. Michael had transformed the hotel's culture, implementing comprehensive training programs that emphasized empathy and respect. Sarah now divided her time between teaching and leading professional development workshops at the hotel, sharing her expertise in education to help staff understand the impact of their words and actions. The fashion designer who had offered her card that night had kept her promise. Sarah consulted part-time for their educational foundation, developing programs for employees' children. Tom's construction firm had grown, earning a reputation for integrity and quality work. The Broadway producer who had witnessed their anniversary celebration had hired Tom's company to renovate several historic theaters. Their small apartment in Queens had been replaced by a modest but comfortable house, decorated with the professional anniversary portraits from that remarkable evening. The hotel itself had become known for more than its luxury. Michael had established a special anniversary program, offering subsidized rates to couples celebrating meaningful milestones. The presidential suite, where Sarah and Tom had enjoyed their celebration, now hosted monthly dinners for couples who, like them, had saved and struggled to mark their special moments. Jennifer's story took an unexpected turn. After losing her position, she had struggled to find work in luxury hotels. A chance encounter with a former guest who ran a community outreach program led her to volunteer at a local shelter. There, she discovered a talent for helping others rebuild their lives with dignity. She wrote Sarah and Tom a heartfelt letter of apology, which they answered with grace and forgiveness. The string quartet of music students who had performed that night became regular fixtures at the hotel, their scholarship program, anonymously funded by Keanu, helping other young musicians pursue their dreams. The maintenance supervisor who had arranged their performance now directed the hotel's community arts program, connecting local artists with opportunities to showcase their work in the hotel's spaces. Keanu's influence continued, though he never sought recognition for his role. The training program he had funded expanded to other hotels in the city, creating a movement toward more inclusive and respectful hospitality. His quiet act of kindness had sparked a transformation that reached far beyond one couple's anniversary celebration. On the anniversary of that night, Sarah and Tom returned to the Grand Plaza. They didn't stay in the presidential suite this time. Instead, they requested their original standard room, now named the Anniversary Suite. Michael had preserved it as a reminder that every room, like every guest, held its own dignity and worth. The couple spent the evening sharing their story with a new group of hotel staff, their words bringing tears and smiles as they describe how kindness had transformed not just one night, but countless lives.